The moment Lucia stepped into the study, the warm scent of books greeted her. Closing her eyes and immersing herself in the ambience, her once heated face cooled. Good. Lucia calmly looked around the study. Among the many castles of Priant, the Dawn Castle, being the family's first castle, held symbolic significance and was quite large. The same went for the library. Given that it had kept scrolls and books for over 500 years, one could naturally infer its grand scale. Lucia treaded carefully inside its walls. Even though it was a private space, only occupied by the maid guarding the library and Cheyenne, who arrived before Lucia, she remembered the advice her friends once gave her. It's common sense to be quiet in a library. Why? Well, to put it simply, people who love books don't like disturbances. You'd hate it if someone interrupted your training, right? I think I understand. Her comrades had taught Kyrie, who knew nothing but fighting, many things. Although they sometimes teased her as a barbarian, they patiently answered her questions, and Kyrie quickly learned. She vividly remembered their conversation, which wasn't the talks they had on the brink of death but much earlier in their travels. It was fascinating. Sobbing. Perhaps because she was recalling old memories, Lucia's eyes teared up. Ugh. Wiping away her tears with her sleeve, Lucia lowered her head, fearing that someone might see, and bit her lip. I wonder how everyone fared after my death. They were all resourceful. They must have thrived. The Empire wouldn't neglect them after all the struggles, right? She occasionally had such thoughts. The fact that the horned Yuma was alive breathed hope into Lucia. If Yuma, who was gravely injured in the battle 500 years ago, survived, wouldn't the others be alive, too? It was hard to let go of that hope. Syra's an elf, but Chia, let's stop. Slap. Lucia slapped her cheeks with both hands, trying to gather herself. It wasn't 200 or 300, but a whopping 500 years since she died. She couldn't be entangled in the past forever. Now she had to find the book she hadn't finished. Delving between the bookshelves, Lucia searched for the book she was reading yesterday. Cilia Imperial Language Dictionary. In her hand were a thick dictionary and a fairy tale book that seemed relatively easy to read. It was thin, with illustrations, likely intended for children. Cilia was the name of the ethnic group that defined Kyrie's identity before she was chosen by the Holy Sword. There was no way to know whether they were extinct or what became of them. With her current inability to even read a fairy tale, researching history was too challenging. Everything had its order. Her immediate goal was to properly read the fairy tale book. Having chosen a book to read, she now needed a quiet place to focus. Fortunately, she had a spot in mind. It was Lucia's designated seat that she had claimed over the past week in the library. It was located next to a window with sunlight pouring in, which made one naturally happy. Whispers. Whispers. Sadly, it was already occupied. That's my spot. Lucia clenched her book tightly. Cheyenne had already occupied the spot Lucia had been sitting in until yesterday. She had assumed that he would have settled somewhere since Cheyenne was in the library before her. She never dreamt it'd be her favorite spot. That guy has a good eye for spots. Lucia tried to resign herself, but her eyes didn't move easily from the seat. It wasn't just about the spot. Several thick books and elegant writing tools mesmerizingly captivated Lucia's gaze. Astonished by the incredible sight, Lucia's eyes widened. He's not planning to read all of that, is he? 1, 2, 3, 9, 10, 11. A pile of books, totaling 11, was stacked like a tower on the desk. Common sense would tell you that reading all of them in a day was impossible. But contrary to Lucia's worry, Cheyenne spread one of the books in front of him and lazily turned the pages. Had he noticed the gaze that had been watching him for a while? Cheyenne slightly lifted his head, glanced at Lucia, chuckled softly, then returned to his reading. Lucia quickly hid the Imperial Language Dictionary and storybook she was holding behind her. Her face turned red in embarrassment. There was a 2-year age difference between them, but still, the books Cheyenne was reading looked incredibly difficult at first glance. The luxurious leather-bound covers, the bookmarks made of woven silk, and the titles impressively embossed in gold ink. Compared to Lucia's storybook, the quality seemed as different as night and day. Comparing their respective books, Lucia hung her head low. Well, there are plenty of other seats, right? It's not like I reserved this spot. Lucia closed her eyes tightly, trying to shake off the regret. It wasn't by accident that Lucia's usual spot was taken. Upon hearing about Lucia's whereabouts from Yuma, Cheyenne, abandoning his daily training routine, had even gone to the lengths of asking the maid in charge of the library about Lucia's regular seat at the crack of dawn. Of course, his intention wasn't solely to tease her. Although he was determined to learn a new language with all his might, there seemed to be no significant issue in reading the characters, perhaps due to some memories from before his reincarnation. Having lost his initial enthusiasm and purpose, he thought, this is becoming more fun. Cheyenne concealed his smile behind the book. He did find Lucia's reaction amusing, but when he saw the title of the book she was holding, he had a hard time suppressing his laughter. The Magnificent Savior, The Eternal Chronicles of the Magnificent Kyrie. The adjective, magnificent, appeared twice, hinting at its fanatical content. Does she even know what that book is about? Cheyenne paused his reading and observed Lucia. Sitting quite a distance from him, she continued to frown and struggle. Let's let it be. It's not like I have any right to judge. Cheyenne understood how Lucia felt. In his past life, he had similar experiences, so he decided to kindly pretend not to notice. Besides, if I heard that my own gameplay montage was released, might be interesting to watch how she reacts. He had some exceptional plays in the game, and he'd even meticulously edited and uploaded them online. Watching an impressive montage from his previous life seemed a reasonable comparison. If I laughed at that, I'd probably get punched and faint again. Yeah, definitely. Cheyenne chuckled to himself and continued with his work, dipping the pen into the ink. Ugh, ugh, Lucia groaned. The reason was obvious. For several hours, even as dusk approached, she had made no progress with the book. Why was the imperial language so difficult? She realized a few things after looking up words in the dictionary for the past few days. There were separate male and female verb endings. This was somewhat manageable, but that wasn't the only issue. There were no rules for singular and plural forms. There were too many conjunctions to remember. There were 6 different tenses, with a mix of irregular and regular forms. There were numerous idioms. Instead of simply saying, "The sunlight is strong," they used a mix of flowery expressions. Every time a new word appeared, she had to search in the dictionary. And just when she thought she found it, another word troubled her. Lucia thumped her head on the desk. I can't do this. Is there something wrong? Can I help you? She looked up at the sound and saw Cheyenne's smiling face. Lucia pretended to be fine and avoided eye contact. She didn't want to be treated like a child who couldn't read a storybook by herself. It's okay, then I'll go. Have fun. Without another thought, Cheyenne turned away. Lucia watched his back as he walked further and further away. There was a certain air of intelligence about Cheyenne as he piled up the books he'd already read and carried them back to their proper place. So, you mean you want to be a teacher? Lucia watched for a long time, and many thoughts passed through her mind. And when Cheyenne began to organize his writing utensils. Hey, what, do you need help? Yes. Lucia nodded, her face grim. It hurt her pride, but she couldn't help it. She was being taught something by a 10-year-old. The thought of Cheyenne as an educated nobleman's child had lowered her standards. Besides, she was even more reluctant to ask Yuma or any of the other maids. She refused to learn from the demons she had fought her entire life. That was her last shred of pride. Even as Lucia bared her neck to their attentions, the barriers she had built up over a lifetime were not easily broken. Cheyenne sat down next to Lucia and spoke in a gentle voice. What's wrong? Everything, it's all of it. So you don't know what it's all about, and you picked up this book? Yes. Cheyenne threw back his head in disbelief. Lucia could only blink at the behavior. She still had no idea what the book she'd chosen was about to cause such a reaction. Cheyenne wiped his face once, then slowly opened his mouth. Listen, yes. Cheyenne pushed the dictionary away from Lucia's view and pointed his finger at the words on the cover. Lucia focused on the movement of his fingers and the sound of his voice, determined not to miss a word. The Magnificent Savior. The Magnificent Savior. The Eternal Chronicles of the Magnificent Kyrie. The Magnificent Kyries. Lucia had a momentary flash of foreboding, but Cheyenne's mouth didn't stop. The Magnificent Kyrie, the Great Savior, immortalized for all eternity, but you're a curiosity, too. I've listened to my ancestors' hymns until my ears scab over, and yet this is the one you picked and chose. Honestly, this book is too pretentious even for me. I'm going to have to skip it. TSK. Cheyenne chuckled in amusement as if to say it was a tale where a single sword could slice through mountains, shred clouds, and walk on water. Sorry. I'm not feeling well. She couldn't take it anymore. Her face was so hot she could barely breathe. Lucia cut Cheyenne off before he could say more, scrambled to her feet, and headed for the doorway. Yeah, take care. Cheyenne watched Lucia's back as she ran out the door, head down. The shape of Cheyenne's mouth, which Lucia hadn't seen because she was too busy shaking with self-pity, was something she would never know for the rest of her life. Next episode. Previous episode. Thud. Thud. The dull sound reverberated throughout the training ground in the early morning. If one were to close their eyes and imagine, it might sound like the beating of a drum. Perhaps it was the noise of something massive sprinting across the ground. Gasp, cough. The cause was none other than Cheyenne Bryant. The results of his training have started to show. It had been just over a month, or perhaps even longer. Compared to standard training, his efficiency has increased multifold, as he used every technique that his hand could reach. The stacked stones he had been piling up had started to display an undeniable grandeur. It's the last lap, young master. The cheerful voice belongs to Insia, who first assisted Cheyenne. As time went by, it was her turn again to serve Cheyenne in their rotation. So, how much time is left? 5 hourglasses. Exactly 25 minutes, young master. All right. After taking several deep breaths, Cheyenne's face became calm. He even smiled contentedly, realizing that he had made significant progress in such a short time. Compared to the first day, he managed to reduce his time by 3 minutes. Although it was just a 10% difference, considering the weight Cheyenne had been bearing, it was not trivial. Thud. Cheyenne roughly set down the weights he had been carrying on his shoulders. Dust would have been kicked up if not for the moist ground. Still, the sound reverberated loudly throughout the training ground. You're incredible, young master. Ophelia, who was clapping and giggling, was an added bonus. As Cheyenne increased the intensity of his training, he also increased the number of people assisting him too. Cheyenne nodded as he arranged the weights he'd dropped on the ground. Enough. I'm probably the weakest in this mansion. It's just embarrassing. Ophelia might be right. But so what? I've served many young masters like Master Cheyenne before, but none have achieved as much as you have in such a short time. You should be more proud. Enough. Even though Insia looked into Cheyenne's eyes while agreeing with Ophelia's opinion, Cheyenne merely pushed out his cup toward her. Recognizing Cheyenne's discomfort, Insia smiled thinly. You should act more childlike, young master. Childlike? Yes. Sometimes, you seem rather aloof and mature. How so? Cheyenne paid attention to what Insia was saying. Being considered mature meant his behavior was causing discomfort to those around him. Not necessarily a bad thing. Pondering for a moment, Insia replied. Well, you never throw tantrums for snacks, you don't make unreasonable demands after much thought, and you train so hard without anyone telling you to. I'm glad I don't act childishly. Just imagining myself doing those things makes me want to get hit. So what? The previous head and the one before acted the same way when they were young. Insia, chattering as usual, poured lemonade into Cheyenne's cup while Cheyenne tried to divert his attention and gulped it down. The sour and sweet drink refreshed his previously dry mouth. The pain in his ankles and trapezius muscles seemed to wash away. This result is beyond expectations. Cheyenne's lofty achievement was largely due to the lemonade that Insia made. It instantly alleviated the fatigue state. His primary goal was to maintain constant training without overtaxing the body. However, another fact emerged as he tested the drink on himself. The true effect of this fraudulent consumable item was something else entirely. It eliminated the necessary growth downtime. In other words, most improvements from recovery were retained without the process. Cheyenne smirked as he gazed at his now empty cup. Would you like more, young master? No, this is enough. More importantly. Declining Insia's offer, Cheyenne looked at Ophelia, who was sitting in the flower bed. Realizing she was the subject of attention, Ophelia quickly hid her hands behind her. This was a familiar situation. Without Cheyenne even saying anything, Insia approached Ophelia with a smile. Ophelia, you knew he'd find out when you followed us. Just give up. But. Before Insia realized it, she had caught up to Ophelia, and as if feeling playful, she placed her hand on Ophelia's tense shoulder and whispered. Ophelia, if you don't let get away from my hand in 3 counts, Cheyenne might just gobble you up. Insia exaggerated her movements to scare Ophelia and sent a sly wink to Cheyenne, expecting something from him. What is it? Was she asking him to play along? Cheyenne seemed to understand her intention and adopted a rather threatening posture, even though he had no real intention of scaring anyone. If you hide and then I find you, it's 1 slap for each cheek. However, snicker, guffaw. The actual reaction was vastly different from what Cheyenne had expected. Ophelia looked blankly at him and then burst into laughter. She covered her mouth with her sleeve and laughed softly, thinking that Cheyenne looked rather cute just now. Sir, did you actually say that? Where in the modern world do people still use such outdated lines, PFF? It's so cheesy. Sigh. He tried his best to play along, but all he got in return was the laughter of the girls. A tear appeared in Insia's eye, which she quickly wiped away. Forget it. I must have gone mad. No, sir, you were really scary just now. Ophelia praised the dejected Cheyenne with a smile, but... damn it. All Cheyenne did was curse under his breath. Somehow, Insia's antics had drawn him in, and on top of that, he had ended up being rebuked. He unknowingly cared about being called pitiful, which was quite frustrating. Cheyenne sighed deeply. He didn't understand why they found everything so hilarious. He withdrew his gaze from them and grasped a spear in his hand. I'll just do what I have to do. The young man massaged his stiffening neck, then shifted his gaze to a wall at the far end of the practice ground. The wall his eyes settled on had numerous spears stuck in it. The spears, driven in deeply from bottom to top, were evenly spaced without any irregularities. This, too, was a principle like the lemonade he drank. The floral ornament of the fairy tale maid. It increased accuracy and dexterity by 5 points each. In the original game, it was a trivial consumable item that was looked down upon due to its minor stat boost, and even then, you could only obtain it once. Many people skipped the quest because of its inefficiency. However, unlike the game, Ophelia made floral ornaments for Cheyenne every chance she got. Thanks to that, he was able to maximize his power and accuracy, but the only downside was the absence of a status window to check the increase in stats. To enjoy the game's system but without a status window. Cheyenne clicked his tongue, feeling regretful. Increasing accuracy any further won't make much of a noticeable difference. Today, I'll spare you, Ophelia. Cheyenne, seemingly cooling off, got a comment from Insia. Hey, you're not tearing it up today. Usually, before you throw a spear, you tear up Ophelia's precious thing without a second thought. Precious, what? What the hell was she going on about? Cheyenne gritted his teeth. Insia, who had been irritating him from the start, became more and more annoying to look at. His grip tightened, and he frowned. Using the spear's shaft, Cheyenne poked Insia's side forcefully. Thud thud thud. Whether it tickled or hurt, a scream echoed through the practice ground. Ouch. I'm sorry. Ow. It hurts. Insia stretched out her hands in defense. Dramatic much. He enjoyed the screaming sounds, but Cheyenne soon got tired of Insia's acting and pulled away the spear shaft. I was going to quit once this succeeded anyway. The efficiency was starting to drop. Cheyenne tapped his shoulder with the spear shaft and gazed at the wall. Cheyenne drew back the hand holding the spear and extended his right leg. He gauged the distance between his current position and the fortress wall, stretching his entire body to its limits and fixing his gaze on the target. Then, whish! With a shout, a spear flew in a straight line, striking its target accurately. It was an ordinary thrown spear devoid of any mana or specialized technique. Yet, its result was anything but ordinary. The spear embedded itself right in the center of the wall. Another spear fitted snugly into the widened end of the already embedded one. That should do it. A subtle smile had formed on the young boy's lips. He had achieved the goal he initially set. Cheyenne lifted his head to check the condition of the sky. A cloudless blue expanse, quite rare in Dawn Castle, where the essence of the Dawn Star was housed. It was likely that tonight would also have a clear sky. It was, indeed, a day perfect for monopolizing things. Ophelia and Insia present. Next episode. Previous episode. Episode 10. This should be enough. Previous. Next. Loudspeaker. Exclamation mark. Dash dash exclamation mark. Ah, Lucia flinched. She must have been distracted by the sound coming from outside the window. She placed a bookmark on the page she was reading and stretched. Yawn. Lately, she had been shut up in the study, reading books non-stop, making her body feel sluggish. She had decided to gather information about what had happened over the last 500 years, but the progress was slower than she thought. There was a limit to how many books she could read in a day, and Lucia's concentration also had its limits. Though Lucia felt discontented with this, the sense of achievement from learning and realizing something new was far more enjoyable than revisiting the path she had already known. Lucia became so engrossed in reading that she neglected her usual training. It felt like she had become a literature girl. She never found joy in reading a book in both her past and present lives. However, deep down, she felt oddly satisfied and realized reading wasn't so bad. I should have learned to read when I had the time. As the hero Kairi, she had joined an expedition. The Empire invested the most resources and manpower in subjugating demons, so she thought she was somewhat fluent in the Imperial language. Should I have asked Siriana or Yura to teach me? No, I can't take away their rest time. How could I even think of it? As the war continued, the availability of food dwindled. Eventually, those with administrative skills, the ink users, began to be moved to the rear. They didn't even get a proper break, let alone learn to read or write. Always at the forefront of battle, Kairi and her companions never really got proper rest. Comparing that harsh environment to the present brought many thoughts. Practicing as much as she wanted, doing whatever she wished, and eating to her heart's content. The Bryant family, who audaciously claimed to be the descendants of the hero, might be very presumptuous. However, if their reason was understandable, she might tolerate it. After all, thanks to them, she got to enjoy such luxuries. Wasn't this beneficial to her in the end? Let's stop for today. Her eyes felt dry after reading for a long time. Lucia rubbed her eyes and looked at her cluttered desk. On the desk were 2 books and a sheet of paper. One was, as expected, a Sicilian Imperial Language Dictionary. The second was a history book she started reading recently. And the last was a Sicilian Imperial Pronunciation Guide for Younger Sisters. Lucia held the wax-coated paper in her hand. The word, younger sister, was written in big, bold letters, which irked her, but she chose to ignore it. After all, Cheyenne, though they had different mothers, was definitely Lucia's elder brother. Perhaps that was why. Thinking about it, Cheyenne had always oddly taken care of her. About a month ago. It was the day after Lucia had used her feeling unwell as an excuse to storm out of the study. Come on, study this. What is this? It's something you urgently need. Such skills. The next morning, Cheyenne handed a sheet of paper to Lucia. The table, which used Sicilian characters to indicate the pronunciation of the Empire's language, was of such high quality that Lucia thought it was quite well made. At first, she wondered how Cheyenne associated Sicilian with her but decided not to bother with it now. Having watched Cheyenne's strange antics for a little over a month, Lucia took this new strangeness in stride. Thanks to this, Lucia was able to pronounce and grasp the Imperial language. At least she had been exposed to the Empire's language for 8 years, hearing and speaking it. Once she roughly knew how to pronounce it, everything progressed swiftly. Now, having deciphered increasingly difficult books, she had reached the point where she could even read history books. She had to refer to the dictionary for unfamiliar words, but the drastic progress was still commendable. Shuffling. Feeling that her lethargic body had somewhat relaxed, Lucia rose from her seat and finished organizing the book she had been reading. Then, Lucia took out a new book from the shelf and confirmed its checkout with the library maid. Afraid she might bump into Cheyenne, Lucia reached her room by the shortest route, locked the door, and plopped down on her bed. The book she held was none other than The Magnificent Savior, the Eternal Saga of the Magnificent Kyrie. Reading an unknown author's fairy tale of her past life had become a ritual for her to end the day. Humming, Lucia opened the middle of the book. The page, opened countless times, was notably worn. Cry, Sirius. Kyrie's sword roared. With an intensity as if tearing the world apart, the sword emitted a pillar of light that neither gods nor demons dared to block. Right. I was very powerful. He. Lucia read her saga with a proud smile. Tap tap tap. Walking down the corridor softly illuminated by moonlight, Lucia didn't rely on any lantern. Even without specifically training her mana, she had sharp night vision. Bathroom, this mansion is unnecessarily big. Lucia wandered the mansion's corridors in her pajamas in the middle of the night, urgently needing the bathroom. She wiggled her toes, holding in the urge. The tea she drank, and reading until her eyes drooped had proven to be a bad combination. I shouldn't have dozed off like that. What a blunder, I'm slipping. A first-class warrior should always maintain top condition, yet she was awakened by the mere need to pee. Even during the days living with her mother outside of the Dawn Castle, she had been quite relaxed, but she never had such issues. Lucia felt pathetic. If this keeps up, I'll be a mess. I should start training again tomorrow. After wandering for a while. Found it. Around the corner, she saw the shiny bathroom sign even in the dark. Running in the corridor wasn't polite, but this was no time for manners. Lucia hurried to the bathroom. Phew. That was close. Feeling relieved, a sense of liberation washed over her. And she thoroughly washed her hands. Clink. What was that? She heard something like glass shattering in the distance. Curious, Lucia slowly walked towards the sound. Cheyenne. In the darkness stood Cheyenne, wielding a sword. Though he looked like a thief with a backpack and a mask, Lucia recognized him from his height and build. Hearing his name, Cheyenne glanced at Lucia and then dismissively turned away, rummaging through the broken glass. Lucia, suspicious of his actions, approached Cheyenne. Hey, what are you doing? At this hour? What if the head maid sees you? Shush, be quiet. What is it? Cheyenne signaled Lucia to be silent with a gesture of his index finger on his lips. Found it. Cheyenne found a necklace and immediately hung it around his neck. What now? Seeing Cheyenne's casual action, Lucia grew suspicious. While Cheyenne was always mysterious, he seemed even more so this time. Even though Lucia had grown somewhat accustomed to his antics while living under the same roof with him for just over a month, his behavior tonight, damaging property without the maid's permission and almost stealing, filled her mind with question marks. Lucia had an ominous feeling. Hey. That's not yours, why are you just putting it on like it's natural? Lucia whispered sharply to Cheyenne, but... Curious. Instead of answering, Cheyenne smiled with a glint in his eyes and opened the window. A brisk winter wind blew in, ruffling Cheyenne's hair and coat. Was he dressed to steal and planned to sell off the jewelry? Regardless, Lucia decided to keep her cool. I'm not curious. Really? You sure? Lucia thought Cheyenne looked especially unpleasant today. She felt a strong urge to hit him hard. If you're curious, you should follow me. After saying this, Cheyenne immediately jumped out of the window. Insane. Lucia quickly peeked outside, but Cheyenne had already disappeared into the darkness. Is he really out of his mind? Forgetting that she was in her pajamas and slippers, Lucia jumped out to chase after Cheyenne. Hey, stop right there. Next episode. Previous episode. Episode 11, let's retrace our steps. Previous. The time was now past midnight inside the servants' quarters in the Dawn Castle. In a space of roughly 40 square meters, 6 maids gathered closely. They, too, were not exceptions from the unexpected commotion. Originally, the patrol groups, composed of 2 maids each, worked in shifts, making it difficult to gather all at once. However, due to an impulsive act by Cheyenne at the mansion's top floor, the patrol teams hastily returned to their quarters. Cheyenne, the young master, smashed the sacred artifact. And he left the mansion with the artifact. Moreover, Miss Lucia also left with him. However, even in a situation that would seem like an emergency to others, there were some who remained unfazed and carefree. Insia, who was patrolling the hallway just moments ago, confidently extended a hand to her colleague. See, didn't I tell you? Hand over the 100 shillings quickly. No, didn't you say something different? What's different? I clearly said that the young master would make a move on the lady before the succession ceremony. Come on, hurry up. The maid who was knitting on the bed seemed taken aback. A month ago, Insia had initiated this bet, which had now lasted to this point. The short-haired black maid sighed deeply and took out 10 shilling coins from her wallet. Is this what you mean by making a move? I thought the 2 of them were physically fighting. I saw it clearly. Okay. The young master smirked, and the lady got annoyed. Then she stormed out in her pajamas. If this isn't making a move, what is? Really? Insia, smiling brightly, snatched the coins from the black-haired maid. Watching the 2, Ophelia could only sigh. By the way, aren't you both worried about the 2 of them? You're just casually betting. Ophelia, who was waiting for the next shift, couldn't understand their nonchalant attitudes. She worriedly fidgeted with her fingers, concerned about the future leaders of Priant. It's fine, Ophelia. I've already reported it quickly to Lady Yuma on the way here. And what's more, she already knew everything. Perhaps because she came in a hurry, Insia unbuttoned her uniform around her chest and waved a hand fan. There have been incidents like this before, haven't there? Ophelia, you really need to get used to this kind of thing. That reminds me. A girl, apparently having just woken up, rubbed her eyes and said. I think something like this happened before, about 70 years ago. Oh, I remember. The guy with orange hair and green eyes. The one who strangled his younger sibling. Right. He was such a weakling. He killed and then sobbed like a baby. Ridiculous. The black-haired maid chuckled as if recalling an amusing memory. But isn't comparing that trash to Cheyenne a bit unfair? Even if Cheyenne is a bit mischievous, he has shown his abilities. The lady, well, she's a mouthful to describe. When you think about it, incidents like this have happened several times before. In hindsight, it's really not a big deal. Even if something goes wrong, another head will emerge from a different family line. Aren't you two being too cold-hearted? Ophelia thought her colleagues were being too indifferent. Unable to understand her roommate's attitude, Insia sat down next to Ophelia. You're just too soft-hearted, Ophelia. Is that so? Ophelia bowed her head, fiddling with her fingers. Insia comforted her by patting her shoulder. The winter will end soon, and the succession ceremony will take place. If the young master is the rightful successor to Priant, then having abilities like the head of the family is not unusual. So, you don't need to worry too much. The head of the family, the father of Cheyenne and Lucia. Hearing that person mentioned, Ophelia seemed to recall something. The head, you mean that trash? No, the trash is that bald-headed one. The current head is definitely a person of exceptional ability. It's strange for a trash without any ability to be in the head's position in the first place. Ah, right. Ophelia chuckled at Insia's remark. Ophelia, who's calling who cold-hearted? Insia felt a cold sweat run down her back. Trash. Ophelia, who never spoke ill of anyone, used the word trash. Insia knew very well that this term was used for those who lacked any substance. Escaping Dawn Castle was an easy task. Without the need to open the tightly closed castle gate, one could simply step on the window sills that had been previously installed on the walls and climb up. Pointless. The boy landed lightly on the snow-covered ground. His past training seemed to have paid off, as he was able to descend from a considerable height without any issues. Cheyenne moved lightly over the snow, not forgetting to check if anyone was following him closely from behind. The view is amazing, Cheyenne murmured, looking at the Milky Way in the sky. In the middle of the countryside, without any light source, the landscape that was hard to see before his regression when he was still in Korea naturally evoked a sense of adventure. Was it because it was far from dawn? He felt a sudden surge of emotions, and he found himself humming a tune. Humming, Cheyenne pondered on which direction to go. In this area where a compass didn't work, he had to determine his direction by looking at the stars. About 30 minutes southeast of Dawn Castle's outskirts. Cheyenne recalled elements of the game as he looked at the sky. Dawn Castle was an advanced stage that only appeared in the game's latter half. With the title of Young House Master, Cheyenne appeared there and was considered a fake boss. HP bars would appear over the servants' heads after Cheyenne Bryant's death. Dawn Castle was a dungeon where they all needed to be defeated. The difficulty level must have been insane. Given its reputation as an advanced stage, not only reaching but also clearing it required high proficiency and ability. Even though he was quite confident in his gaming skills, he had to retry the dungeon more than 10 times before clearing it. Yet, Cheyenne chose to move at night. No matter how good a 10-year-old statser, even Lucia, the protagonist of the game, was still just a child who had just finished her coming-of-age ceremony at the end of the tutorial. Although she had much greater abilities than the current Cheyenne, she couldn't defeat even a single maid of Dawn Castle in her state. Things outside the walls, however. The maids of Dawn Castle were strong, but the creatures in the forest surrounding Dawn Castle weren't. He hummed as he walked. Perhaps it was because he was humming, but he heard the sound of someone approaching from the darkness. Perfect timing. Seeing his first prey appear, Cheyenne grinned with fighting spirit. All right, it's sorta time. Are you making a big deal over just one stray frost wolf? A sarcastic remark came from behind him, but Cheyenne ignored it. Right now, he had to focus on the enemy in front of him. Cheyenne crouched down and drew his sword. Through the trees and bushes, shining eyes, along with a hint of frost, locked onto Cheyenne. It was his first real battle. Hoping that all his efforts wouldn't be in vain, Cheyenne waited for the enemy to make the first move. Seeing Cheyenne in a battle stance, the wolf charged. With a snarl, the wolf opened its jaws wide towards Cheyenne's face. But it was predictable. An attack coming in a straight line was too easy to dodge. Swiftly bending his knees, he swung his blade upwards. With a swift motion, Cheyenne's blade cut through the wolf's belly. The wolf, unexpectedly thrown into the air, screamed in pain as blood sprayed out. With a thud, the wounded beast crashed into a tree on the opposite side. The fallen wolf gasped heavily. Ha! Cheyenne approached the wolf with a somewhat dissatisfied expression. I aimed for its vital part, but it didn't die with a single stroke. Am I really that weak? Cheyenne raised his sword and aimed for the wolf's eye. With a piercing sound, he felt the sensation of the eyeball and skull being crushed through the hilt. The wolf shivered for a moment, then went rigid, and soon after, it stopped breathing. Was all this fuss just for this? The voice full of irritation belonged to Lucia, who had been watching Cheyenne's battle closely. Wearing only slippers and pajamas, she stared coldly at Cheyenne while rubbing her cold arms. Cold. Ignoring Lucia's sarcastic comments, Cheyenne smirked back as Lucia glared at him unhappily. Yes. Thanks to someone, I came into this winter forest wearing only pajamas without a coat. I'm cold. If you trained the way I taught you, you wouldn't be cold, would you? Cheyenne took off his coat and offered it to Lucia. Lucia just stared at him. What are you waiting for? Take it. My arm's about to fall off. Aren't you really cold? I told you. When have I ever lied to you? Lucia accepted Cheyenne's kindness. Come to think of it, he was right. He had never lied to Lucia. So his bizarre training method was true. Lucia silently watched Cheyenne's back as he led the way. Just wearing a tunic, a pair of leather pants, and shoes with a single insole, the boy didn't seem to be cold at all. It was as if he was on a spring walk. Next episode. Previous episode. Episode 12, A Winter Night's Out. Indeed, it wasn't easy for the two children to traverse the forest. Especially a deep forest where even the moonlight could barely penetrate through the thick branches above it. Due to the lack of light, the visible distance was clearly limited. Since it wasn't a path frequented by people, their feet kept sinking deep into the snow. I can see why she'd be tired. Even in these dire circumstances, the young boy who stood at the front had swung his sword repeatedly, piling up the carcasses of frost wolves, creatures that would ordinarily require an adult to be in top form just to fend off. Lucia looked at Cheyenne in admiration. A frost wolf wasn't particularly a powerful beast. They didn't regenerate, and there was no specific condition to kill them. One just needed to stop their breathing, much like slaughtering a beast. Even a farmer who hasn't learned swordsmanship could manage if they put in all their effort. However, that was under ideal conditions. One should be in broad daylight and should also counteract the creature's habit of moving in packs. Lucia couldn't take her eyes off Cheyenne. Is he really just 10? The reason for her thoughts was clear. Firstly, his combat skills were too proficient. Even if Cheyenne was the child of a great martial artist, he was still young. He had short arms, and his line of sight was low. The disadvantage of having a short reach didn't need much consideration. Even a child could understand how fatal it could be in a life or death situation. Having a low line of sight was also the same. The surrounding darkness that limited one's view posed a lot of risks. The limited time to identify and respond to threats could be fatal if one lets the guard down, even for a moment. Although Cheyenne was splattered with blood, he was not injured. It's unbelievable. His sword swing and defensive techniques seem like those of a novice, but his timing is like. Even now. As Cheyenne was confirming a kill, another wolf charged at him. Hadn't it seen how its kin had been slaughtered before? If anything, the limited visibility seemed to hinder the frost wolves more. Cheyenne effortlessly dodged the creature's gaping mouth. That was no exaggeration. The snow limited movement and wasn't an ideal place to dodge attacks. To evade a beast charging head-on, one must have the energy to do so. Cheyenne never panicked when dodging. He'd just take a step or two or sometimes just bow his head or lie down. Moreover, his actions were always half a beat faster. It was as if he knew every move his opponents would make. The beasts that failed their attacks were inevitably doomed. Since they couldn't change the direction of their heads in midair, with just a slight turn of his foot, Cheyenne had the enemy in his grip. His blood and flesh-stained sword struck the back of the creature's head, breaking it. The creature's body limply fell to the ground. How many are left? That was the last one. After the battle, they spoke in a calm tone. Lucia, knowing the question was directed at her, replied easily. Then, let's rest a bit. Cheyenne sat down on the carcass he had just brought down. He then rotated his shoulders, releasing the tension that had built up in them. His arms felt sore after swinging for such a long time. I wish they'd stop coming out. Why are they attacking until they're all defeated? Cheyenne sighed, looking exasperated. The heat from the intense activity radiated from his body. The notion that he would be killed if he didn't kill made his palms cold. Taking a deep breath, Cheyenne took a sip of the lemonade he had brought along. The refreshing sensation swept away the fatigue built up from continuous combat. Anyway, after the narrow escape, Cheyenne checked the condition of his weapon. The longsword, which he had hastily picked up from the weapon storage, was now covered in the beast's blood and flesh. It felt strangely realistic in such a place. I knew it. Halfway through, the sword wasn't listening to me. Cheyenne rubbed the sword in the snow, trying to scrape off blood and flesh. But, contrary to what he thought, it didn't clean easily. Maybe because the excitement of battle hadn't fully subsided yet, he felt an unnecessary rush. Damn it. Why isn't this cleaning? You're not doing it right. Give it to me. Lucia dragged a wolf corpse, sat opposite Cheyenne, and stretched out her hand. So, how should it be done? Cheyenne handed the dirty sword to Lucia. As Lucia took the sword, she chuckled softly. He acted like a professional hunter who had been on the field for decades, but he didn't know this minor thing. Discovering Cheyenne's childlike side, Lucia felt unexpectedly pleased. The frost wolf isn't called Frost for show. Lucia held the blade up to the moonlight, checking for any damage. Unlike other beasts, their breath is cold as ice. When you fight them, sticking a sword into their bodies and mouths can have cumbersome results. Luckily, there are no missing teeth. Having said that, Lucia held the sword upside down. What happened next made Cheyenne's eyes widen. Something that could only be described as light burst from the tip of the blade, moving swiftly and wiping across the blade. The filth that was frozen and stuck to the blade made a cracking noise and then thudded onto the ground. What was that just now? Cheyenne leaned forward, filled with excitement. Her curiosity was piqued by the supernatural phenomenon. I usually don't show this to anyone. Maybe it was because she saw Cheyenne's genuine surprise and interest. One corner of Lucia's mouth curled slightly. He wouldn't have known. Lucia savored Cheyenne's reaction. You're probably the first one to see this up close. Finally, Lucia felt she had an informational advantage over Cheyenne. She felt proud, her heart fluttering. Well, this is. Could it be Sword Chi? You knew. However, things didn't go as Lucia had hoped. Perhaps it was because she missed the opportunity to explain something to Cheyenne. Lucia immediately showed an expression of regret. Yes, right, it's Sword Chi. But it seems different from what I know. Certainly, The sword chi depicted in the game was something simpler, like a buff. The weapon would emit a flashy effect for a certain period, increasing the basic attack and critical hit rate. However, the sword chi that Lucia just demonstrated was far from what Shine had seen in the game. Instead of simple light streaks which increased range, the burst of lights that scrubbed the blade was entirely new. What I knew enveloped the blade entirely. The blade seemed to be filled with a strange energy. Of course, probably only I can do this. Not everyone can control chi so finely. Lucia puffed up her chest proudly, but the words from Shine's mouth weren't pure admiration. A 9-year-old child emitting chi from a sword. Ah. It said in the books that it requires considerable talent and years of training. That's so. Lucia felt trapped. She had gotten too carried away. Regardless of being a prodigy, it was impossible for a 9-year-old to harness chi. Her unnecessary show led to potential suspicion. Lucia bit her lip. You're a genius. Contrary to her worries, there was pure admiration in Shine's eyes. Yeah, I think so too. Lucia smirked again, her heart fluttering with pride. However, to not appear too pleased, she cleared her throat. Ahem. Anyway, I inserted the sword chi between the blade and the filth to shake it off. I see. That's really amazing. Shine looked at Lucia with amused eyes. But, aren't you going to tell us where we're headed? Lucia finally mustered the courage to ask. She had been itching to ask about the destination, but she couldn't dare disturb Shine, who was fiercely swinging his longsword in battle. Well. However, Shine's response, accompanied by a white breath in the cold air, wasn't what Lucia had hoped for. Well. Did that mean even he didn't know where they were headed? Don't tell me, you got lost. No way. Shine briefly responded and looked up at the night sky again. After every intense sword fight, he needed to recalibrate his sense of direction. But Lucia found his behavior puzzling. Shine would often gaze at the sky after a battle. Lucia, not understanding the purpose of this action, grew increasingly curious. For someone like her with an innate sense of direction, looking at stars to determine one's location seemed unnecessary. Then, after a moment, Shine spoke. Would you believe me if I said we're treasure hunting? Treasure hunting. Yes, treasure hunting. Quite a direct answer. It sounded like something a child would come up with, but this journey was far from child's play. Games always instill a sense of purpose in players. Be it combat, gathering, or even achieving accomplishments, weren't players awarded with grand sound effects and impressive badges. It was the same in Reincarnation of the Sword Saint. To clear the Dawn Castle, a dungeon in the game's latter part, the developers placed various elements players might find beneficial to encounter. For instance, the treasure hunting that Shine mentioned to Lucia was one such element. It might be unnecessary for seasoned players, but these elements were created for those less adept or those who enjoyed boosting their achievement rates. A classic example would be the achievement for clearing the game using the Shine Priant, a trashy tactic. We're almost there. Shine touched the necklace around his neck, quickening his pace. It had been a while since any monsters attacked them. This meant they were entering the safety zone surrounding the destination. After walking for a bit, a familiar, almost tedious, landscape unfolded before them. There, they saw an entrance to a cave adorned with lavish decorations. It was the bonus stage located north of the Dawn Castle. Indeed, it was just as he had seen in the game. Except for a few things. Shine looked down at a body caught under his feet. A face, frozen in a scream, was half buried in the snow. Slowly, he lifted his head. The unusual lighting made this place, which he had visited numerous times in the game, seem unfamiliar. Next episode. Previous episode. Loudspeaker new. It seems someone arrived before us. Shine smiled grimly as he examined the body. This place rarely saw snow-free days throughout the year. If it had been a long dead body, it would have been buried deep beneath the snow, not jutting out as it did. Hold this for a moment. Shine handed Lucia his longsword. Lucia, with her gaze fixed on the cave's entrance, took it. What are you doing now? Well, I need to at least guess what those creatures inside are up to. Although only 11 years old, Shine had no hesitation in handling a corpse. As he cleared away the surrounding snow, the figure of a sturdy adult male was revealed. The man wore a cloth garment with a leather vest on top. Judging by his wide-soled leather shoes, he seemed familiar with the terrain here. He looks fine from the outside. Yet, the man lay dead with a look of sheer despair on his face. It seemed as if he had died in such agony that he couldn't even close his eyes properly. However, contrary to his appearance, there was no trace of a blade cut or any sign of physical assault on his clothing. Same with his face. It was a clean look without a single bruise and naturally put one on guard. Could he be a merchant who fell victim to thieves? I doubt that. If anything, he might have been the thief. Shine dismissed Lucia's speculation. A thief. Lucia wondered how Shine came to such a conclusion. A thief. A thief that looks so immaculate without a single scar. Shine didn't react to Lucia's challenge and continued to inspect the body. Also, a faint scent of alcohol is coming from the cave, and I can hear some muffled voices. If this isn't the carelessly discarded body of a merchant they robbed, what is it? Look at this. Shine opened the corpse's mouth using a twig. Lucia noticed the decayed teeth. The swelling under his chin made me suspect, but the state of his mouth is telling. They wouldn't have rotted like this if he took regular care of his teeth. And also, Shine examined the man's hands. No calluses that form from holding a pen often. But, judging by the hardness of his palm, he's someone familiar with blades. The lack of scars probably means he was pretty skilled. Lucia narrowed her eyes, scanning the surroundings. Perhaps she was looking for any signs of someone hiding. However, only faint signs of presence were felt from the cave's direction and nothing else. I think there's someone inside the cave who managed to kill this guy without leaving a single mark. So, Lucia thought of various possibilities. The ability or technique to harm a target without inflicting any physical damage would surely be limited. Poisoning, commanding spirits, telekinesis, it might even be a curse. Just thinking about it gave Lucia chills. Isn't this a highly dangerous situation? Those who used poisons or curses had always been a troublesome lot, even when she was Kyrie in her previous life. They were fundamentally sneaky and vile. Trusting them was out of the question, making them always a tedious lot to deal with. So, what should one do to take care of them? Gulp. Lucia swallowed hard. Eliminate them before they employ any of their tricks. But right now, Lucia couldn't opt for such an approach. In her current state, it was utterly impossible. No matter how talented she might be as a reincarnator, there were walls called impossibility. Moreover, she had Shine with her now. Shine, the only one she could call family since her reincarnation. With her current fragile body, there was no way she could protect Shine and combat those wicked people. The heavy burden weighed her down. Now is the time to escape without them noticing. Lucia felt a surge of strength in her fists. Her fist, wasn't she just holding a sword? Lucia looked up in surprise. The sword that she had been holding was now in Shine's hand. Hey, don't tell me, really. Lucia reached out to take it back, but Shine evaded her with a slight step back. Scared, Shine gave Lucia a playful smirk. But now was not the time for jokes. Lucia glared at him sternly. Don't mess around. It's time to back off. No. I might not know what treasures are inside the cave, but we can always wait for another opportunity. Not at all. How about we bring the maids? They're strong enough. They might be able to handle whatever's in that cave. There's no time for that. Suddenly, the boy took Lucia's hand and led her towards the cave. Trudge, trudge. There was no hint of hesitation in his step. Did he lose his nerve? No, rather than that. No time. What does that mean? Normally, she would shake off Shine's hand, but she couldn't resist his will. For some reason, she felt weak. Suddenly, Lucia remembered a past memory. It definitely happened 500 years ago. Long before the expedition to kill the demon began. It was during the time she first started wandering with her companions. Kill him. Yura, do we really have to do this? He seems remorseful enough. Sometimes, you have to do things you don't want to. Yura was weaker than Kyrie at that time, but Kyrie couldn't defy Yura. Ugh. Feeling nauseous, Lucia wondered why such bad memories surfaced at this time. She closed her mouth tightly and lowered her head. Lucia blankly stared at Shine's retreating back. A vague feeling intertwined in her mind, making it hazy. But the warm touch from his hand was easy to recognize. Throughout this, Shine remained calm. For the record, I find you scarier than the guy over there. So, don't worry too much. What do you mean by that? Shine's joke made Lucia chuckle. Perhaps because of that, her tension eased. Her worries drifted away. For a moment, as she was being dragged along, Lucia wondered if Shine might be a sorcerer. Soon, they arrived at the entrance of the cave, where light was leaking out. Whether it was out of confidence or just thoughtlessness, there were no guards at the entrance. Shine listened carefully. As they approached, the voices from inside grew clearer. What do you see? Shine whispered to Lucia. See, it just looks like a bunch of thieves celebrating with drinks after a looting spree. That's what I thought too. With a brazen reply and a completely relaxed demeanor, Shine started to stretch. Then he squatted down, eyes focused. Now what? What do you mean? What? Shine responded nonchalantly to Lucia. We have to kill them all. Inside the cave, in the distance, they could see a bonfire. A distance of roughly 20 meters. But now's not the time. Since there's no guard, we should go deeper and wait for the right moment. What would happen next? Without any light to guide them, at worst, they would be running around blindly. However, considering the repulsive smell of alcohol that wafted out, it seemed they were heavily intoxicated. He just needed to give each of them a taste of the blade. It might be the moment to commit his first murder, but his heart felt calmer than expected. It's thanks to Priant's strength. Cheyenne thought up to that and nodded his head. Right now, Lucia Priant was beside him. If he hesitated and appeared weak, things would get complicated. He just needed to act. Cheyenne partially closed one eye. His eyes, which would become accustomed to the dark, would give him an advantage over them. What should I do? Lucia asked Cheyenne. With a dazed expression, she wondered why he hadn't asked or instructed her to do anything. Should I punch them? No. A sharp voice came through, but Cheyenne didn't care. Just stand back and watch. It's noisy. A man with a patchy beard rose from the deepest part of the cave. He was enjoying his sleep when the foolish guards failed to do their one job. Without even trying, he could hear the sounds clearly and furrowed his brow. Various screams and noises echoed through the cave. The man yawned lazily and scratched his thigh. His sleepy eyes couldn't see the dim light from afar anymore. Did they get ambushed? Damn, why is today so unlucky? He lit a lantern with a spark from his fingertips. As the cave lit up, a boy in armor appeared. Kid, put that down. Want to talk? If you stop now, I might spare you. The man seemed completely relaxed, even playful. The infuriated boy spat on the ground in response. You're talking nonsense. Next. Hey, kiddo, isn't your mouth a bit too sharp? Do you eat rags for every meal? Instead of getting angry at Cheyenne's taunts, the slender-framed man just shrugged them off as if they were amusing. Hey. Cheyenne wiped the blood smeared on his face with his sleeve. It was as expected. Outside the cave, there was a body without a single scratch. The only person within Cheyenne's knowledge who would do such a bizarre thing was the woman before him. Why is this person cross-dressing? A woman. For some reason, the woman in front of him was dressed as a man. He didn't know why, and didn't care to find out. What mattered was that her disguise hadn't fooled Cheyenne's sharp eyes. One more to the count. Cheyenne gripped his longsword in reverse. His combat excitement was waning, lessening the anger in his voice. Yet, his irritation towards his opponent had not subsided. He didn't like being threatened in this situation. You act so arrogantly without even knowing your place. How amusing. Arrogant. Amusing. Unfamiliar words. The the woman, lost her smile and frowned. Being looked down upon by this audacious kid, even for her, wasn't an easily dismissible situation. Kiddo, we just met, but what do you know to be talking so big? I'm genuinely curious. I know as much as I know. And he truly did. It wasn't an exaggeration, nor bravado. Cheyenne knew very well who she was. Her slender body, the unique way she spoke, and, crucially, the shape of the short sword she carried. Even with her disguise, he was certain of her identity. Special Task Force of the Police Bureau, Berta. By rank, maybe by now, a lieutenant. Unlike the bandits he just dealt with, she was a character frequently seen in the game. He was glad to see her, but he was bothered by the fact that she shouldn't have been here. In this bonus stage, Brothers Relic, there shouldn't be any NPCs. Berta. I am Alrain. And the Police Bureau. Was it because he revealed her identity? Her voice was slightly trembling. Cheyenne cut her off as if he couldn't tolerate any more of her words. Don't dodge it. Did you think I would be fooled by such a pathetic disguise? Is that so? Then it doesn't matter. Berta touched her face and removed her human skin mask. A graceful lady with shiny black hair cut to her shoulders. Her face, which had been hidden, was now revealed. Until now, no one ever realized my disguise. Berta's heavily modulated voice returned to its original tone. And I'm not a lieutenant. I was promoted to inspector not long ago. Berta smirked. The fact that her identity was revealed by this little kid was something. Due to the nature of the Special Task Force, where they had to operate in secrecy, she didn't reveal her identity readily, and most enemies who knew her face met their end at her hands. In ways that left no trace, making them impossible to identify. That was why Berta was more shaken than usual. So, who are you? I even doubt if you're genuinely this young. It's the first time I've heard of a kid who knows about me. Darn. You're tense. It was understandable why Berta was this tense. How could she not be when a kid, seemingly wet behind the ears, saw through her disguise and knew her true identity? Cheyenne chuckled. In the game, she makes her appearance roughly 10 years from now. At that time, she was still an inspector, so it was funny that she hadn't been promoted in 10 years. Slowly, things were going as planned. I don't care why a high-ranking person like you is in disguise and teaming up with thieves. Don't you think your life is too precious to be wasted for the nation? Precious life. Why are you so relaxed? Your skills are mediocre. Suddenly, Berta felt the weight of her sheathed blade lessen. Clang. Don't move. I'll kill you. Berta realized that her beloved weapon, The formless sword was now placed right near her neck. Damn, was it not one, but two of them? Berta swallowed her saliva. She hadn't noticed their approach. However, she felt aggrieved. Her senses weren't so dull as to be easily threatened by a mere kid who slays people like animals. Suddenly, she wondered if the kid had deliberately deceived her, knowing her identity. She felt sickened. I've never been so careless. Oh really? Maybe you've just become weaker than that guy. If you survive this, you should train harder. Berta felt the warm sensation of the blade on her neck. The person behind her pressed the blade without hesitation as if ready to take her life. Don't even twitch a finger. Your breath reeks of alcohol, so breathe softly. And, Cheyenne, what do you need to watch out for next? Keep an eye on that one. He might use magic, so be careful if he moves his lips. Got it. The boy spoke as if he was joking, but the girl emanated a palpable threat. Berta instinctively sensed the warning without needing words and broke into a cold sweat. How did I not notice someone giving off such a strong presence? What kind of kid is this? Berta decided to start with an explanation. Young man, Cheyenne, right. Let's resolve this with words. There's probably some misunderstanding between us. You were quite concise. Won't we talk? You talked about killing me earlier. You are quite the comedian. I often hear that I'm funny. Sir. Berta forced a laugh to survive. It seemed like Cheyenne thought of something amusing, as he smirked. Now, strip. What? Berta looked stunned. Inside a cold cave, a woman, wearing only her underwear, was tied up and shivering. Hey, you have a better figure than I expected. Quite sexy. It's just clothes. I usually look skinnier, sir. Berta responded with a forced laugh, trying to match Cheyenne's mood. She faced an unexpected form of harassment, but she didn't object, wanting to survive. Wow, there isn't a single place you haven't hidden a weapon. Why are modern spies so sneaky? Well, it's just the special forces. Sir, the regular troops respect honor. Honor? What crap. Lucia, this looks good. You take it. Thanks, Cheyenne. This woman, she's like a goldmine. Ah, I'll take this one. Cheyenne rummaged through Berta's belongings, humming a tune, while Lucia kept a sharp eye on Berta. Once he finished, Cheyenne stretched out. I can't use that trick again. I need to get stronger fast. To divert the enemy's attention, the blood he had purposefully smeared had a terrible smell. After all, it was the blood of thieves who had only consumed alcohol and meat. It was sticky and had a foul odor. But he felt no regret. Thanks to that, he easily subdued Berta, known as the crazy woman of the special forces. Grateful for the fact, Cheyenne wiped the blood off using Berta's shirt, which felt quite luxurious. Now, Cheyenne faced Berta. Let's hear why a spy like you is with these thieves. Cheyenne, she was talking about honor earlier. Why don't we just kill her? If we don't torture her, she might not talk. It's a misunderstanding, little lady. I'll explain everything. Ask any questions you might have. Who was this brat? Lucia looked down at Berta with a cold gaze. She was quite displeased. Lucia worried about the Empire's future, wondering how such a woman reached the position of a law enforcement inspector. Such things never happened while Kyrie was alive. You should be ashamed enough to bite your tongue and end your life. It's just a police position, after all. What could I possibly know? Just like you said, I'm also just a salaryman. Enough with the noise. Cheyenne interrupted the conversation as if he couldn't stand to listen any longer. Let's clear up the misunderstanding. Depending on what you say, I'll decide what to do. A life and death decision. Berta's life was in Cheyenne's hands. However, Cheyenne didn't have any intention to kill Berta. Berta played a significant role in a future parliamentary terrorist attack event. Building a relationship now for the future might not be a bad choice. He might have chosen a more harmonious method if she hadn't been so arrogant. But what could he do? She brought it on herself. That is to say. Berta weakly lowered her head and licked her lips. Embarrassingly, I got lost. And I was about to freeze to death when I found a bandit's lair nearby. I thought I'd stay there until the winter ended. Of course, I planned to kill them all when spring came. The corpses up ahead, you killed them as an example. Ah, you saw that. Yes, I did. At that moment, Lucia chimed in. Where were you headed? If you lost your way, you must have had a destination. The Devil's Castle. Berta hesitated and then weakly replied. Why are you so hesitant? What's the Devil's Castle? Speak clearly, or I'll cut off your fingers. At the mention of the unknown term, Devil's Castle, Lucia angrily made a threatening gesture, yet her expression was oddly excited. It's true. I received clear instructions from the higher-ups. It's the Devil's Castle. If you check my coat pocket, there's a piece of paper. Cheyenne, as per Berta's words, checked the coat pocket and pulled out a piece of paper. On the paper was a clear mention of the Devil's Castle. Cheyenne scanned the document, which even had illustrations. It was quite an official mission order. Isn't this Dawn Castle? The sketch featured a panoramic view of Dawn Castle drawn in charcoal. The true identity of the Devil's Castle was the Dawn Castle of Priant. Hey, how did it turn out like this? Cheyenne chuckled while touching his forehead. Lucia was curious about why Cheyenne laughed. Why? Is there something funny written? Yes, something amusing is written. Cheyenne flung his coat at Berta, who looked confused by the situation. This girl, the paper is an order to watch the succession ceremony of Priant and then write a report. Dress appropriately, Officer Berta. First, you have to untie me. Lucia, just untie her legs. Following the order, Lucia draped the coat over Berta and tied new ropes above it. After that, she untied the ropes from Berta's feet. Lucia was quite skilled. Officer Berta. Yes. Cheyenne seemed to have a rough idea of why Berta, who shouldn't be here, was present and why she hadn't been promoted until now. Are you aware that the succession ceremony is the day after tomorrow? I don't. Can you guess who I am? I don't. You. Are you ostracized within your organization? Berta's face turned pale at Cheyenne's pointed question. It seemed he hit a sore spot. Lucia looked at Berta disdainfully. To begin with, the Special Task Force never had any expectations of you. They openly employed you, hoping for your failure. The mission doesn't mention Lucia or me. Even if it mentions Lucia, why doesn't it mention me? That means. Berta's face went pale. The boy's identity was becoming clearer. A child related to the succession ceremony. Priant. Cheyenne Priant. Berta's eyes widened in realization. She almost killed the VIP designated by the higher-ups. She broke into a cold sweat at this realization. On the other hand, Cheyenne smirked. He saw a path to make Officer Berta his own. You. Who is so incompetent and rigid? I have quite an interesting proposal. Yes. For now, follow me. Berta blankly watched the retreating figure of the boy. What are you doing? Hurry up and follow. Ah, understood. Seeing Berta's dumbfounded expression, Lucia poked her buttocks with a knife. So damn unlucky. Tears welled up in Berta's eyes, lamenting her pitiful situation. The bonus stage, The Brothers' Tomb, was a puzzle that didn't require any particular strength to clear, fitting the theme. To be precise, keen observation and memory were required. Even that could be easily done with notes. Right oval, triangle above, the second candlestick to the left, and a trumpet below. Cheyenne held a pen and paper, meticulously documenting the inside of the cave as he moved forward. The way he looked around, making sure he didn't miss anything, raised questions to anyone watching. However, Lucia and Berta just quietly watched Cheyenne. It was a good plan. Berta was very curious about the bait that Cheyenne mentioned, but due to Lucia's icy stare, she had to keep her mouth shut. The wound on her neck from Lucia still stung. Cheyenne, having turned his back to them, chewed on the beef jerky he had brought with him. He was worried that maybe the thieves from before might have damaged it, but fortunately, it was just a needless concern. Artifacts were placed all around the cave, showing signs of human modification and having magical properties that made them invisible unless one focused on recognizing them. Slowly, was it done? Cheyenne wiped the sweat that had formed on his forehead. Finding hidden pictures in the dark cave was harder than he thought. Having spent quite a bit of effort, when he reached the end of the cave, Cheyenne put a period on the paper. He squinted his eyes and quickly skimmed through the densely written notes. It was to contrast and check if there were any discrepancies from his memories. I was a bit worried. Contrary to his concerns, nothing was missing or added. Relieved, Cheyenne looked up. He faced a pale blue stone wall. Unlike the paths he had passed, this space had no distinct features, making it stand out and quite obvious to Cheyenne. He thought of it as an impurity in the game. In the game, when you brought the cursor close, there was a spot that flashed. But now, there wasn't even a mouse, let alone an interface. He had no choice but to touch the stone wall and meticulously check for any differences. Cheyenne slowly brushed over every corner of the stone wall. He briefly considered asking for Lucia and Berta's help, but soon, he found a section that felt slightly different to the touch. What followed was predictable. He pushed forward with all his might. That was all. Coo goo goo gong. Suddenly, there was a loud, earth-shaking effect. Sir. Lucia, who had been watching, widened her eyes in shock, and Berta staggered, calling out to Cheyenne. Lucia, don't open your eyes until I say it's okay. And don't move. Understood. Cheyenne turned his head to warn her, and Lucia obediently closed her eyes. Refusing his request at this point seemed foolish. She decided not to ask unnecessarily about what Cheyenne wanted to show her and how he knew about this place. She felt she'd find out when they reached the end of the cave anyway. Sir, what about me? Berta found it strange that Cheyenne hadn't said anything to her. Do as you please. If you're curious, keep your eyes open. I'll close them. Once he confirmed that she closed her eyes tightly, Shine lowered his outstretched hand. And then, the wall in front of them disappeared. The cliched event of a stone wall crumbling down to reveal a secret passage did not occur. Instead, the scenery around them changed rapidly with every blink of an eye. Once, twice. From an endless blue meadow, suddenly, it transformed into a sun-beaten sandy beach. The abrupt change in environment, even without any physical movement, disoriented their senses and induced nausea. Even though I prepared myself, it's still making me dizzy. Ugh. While lost in such thoughts, the sound of someone retching came from behind. However, Shine didn't stop altering the scenery with his blinks. It's best to get through such situations as quickly as possible. The place changed dozens of times. They finally reached a point where the scenery remained unchanged, no matter how much he blinked. Shine exhaled deeply and looked back. We're here. You can open your eyes now. With Shine's permission, Lucia slowly opened her eyes. Upon doing so, she saw they had arrived at a fog-covered graveyard. Just a moment ago, they were in a dark cave. Moving so suddenly to a different place, Lucia recalled a particular term in her mind. Is this a transfer maze? She felt a hot and dry wind, and then soon after, a cool grassy scent wafted by. Feeling not just through sight but other senses, Lucia subtly realized they were headed somewhere. And now, there was a smell of vomit. Ugh. Blair. Transfer, you said. I told you not to open your eyes, but you defiantly did anyway. I'm sorry. With teary eyes, Berta apologized, and Shine looked at her with disdain. The source of the smell was none other than Berta. Whatever she had thrown up had disappeared somewhere during the repeated transfers, but sadly, the rest hadn't. Lucia took 2 steps away from her. How in the world did such an imbecile become a special force inspector? What happened in the last 500 years? Lucia felt like leaving Berta somewhere completely different. While moving through the fog-covered graveyard, it was Lucia who spoke up. Shine. This one here, we probably need to get her changed. She smells terrible. Perhaps. Sir. I promise I won't mess up again. Please. Berta seized the moment, speaking with desperation in her voice. She couldn't bear it any longer. What was so unbearable for her? The situation itself was a great ordeal for her. She was familiar with the scent of blood and filth. Even a noble lady who would never come face to face with a corpse in her entire life, would eventually become indifferent to these scents, having served in the special forces. However, Berta held the position of an inspector within the special forces. Having always been involved in high-profile tasks like VIP protection or assassination, in other words, glamorous tasks, her current situation felt deeply shameful. She was always at the forefront, slaughtering enemies. After sweeping away the enemies, Berta, the mad dog of the special forces, would gulp whiskey from her hip flask and light up a cigar. She was quite pleased with her renowned nickname as it flashed before her like images from a movie. But what on earth was her current state? The current Berta was the complete opposite of that image. There were stains of whatever she had vomited all over the tightly tied ropes. Even those ropes were part of her personal items that she usually carried. To make matters worse, those who currently had her restrained were children who were not even at the prime age. No matter how prestigious the Bryant family was in the empire, being defeated by mere kids and paraded in such a humiliating manner was unthinkable. The situation was more than enough to destabilize her mental state. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say she felt like she had fallen into a bottomless pit. Moreover, she was constantly ridiculed for the smell. Tears welled up in Berta's eyes, but she desperately held back from shedding them. Enough is enough. Cheyenne, while setting up some pieces on a tombstone, looked at Berta. Inspector Berta. Yes. You just lied, didn't you? Shall we go over it again? What? Close your eyes. I clearly warned you to keep your eyes closed. But you defiantly opened them and started retching. I'm ashamed. Berta was at a loss for words. Her voice, filled with defeat, was tinged with tears. It's fortunate that I didn't kill someone who has already lost my trust once. Regardless of it being a mistake, you aimed a knife at me. Consider this a punishment. Cheyenne then turned his attention back to arranging the pieces. I might need to learn some magic. The inconvenience is not just a little bit. From what he had seen of Lucia's sword prowess earlier, he felt that knowing magic would allow various applications for his benefit. Even now, if he could use wind or water magic, he wouldn't have to listen to Berta's whining. Cheyenne twisted a grave piece statue of a dolphin and an angel blowing a horn in a clockwise direction, solving the last puzzle. A short while later, not only the stone coffin in front of Cheyenne but also the numerous other coffins around him dispersed like mirages, leaving only one behind. Cheyenne approached the last remaining coffin. The coffin of the brother. He opened the lid, which only had a single line of pitiable writing on it. A sword. Lucia, who had approached him, raised an eyebrow questioningly. Inside, there lay a lone sword with a pristine white blade. It's not just any sword. Xian took out the brilliantly shining sword. It's a holy sword. Holy sword. At the mention of that burdensome name, Lucia's fingertips trembled. Next episode. Previous episode. Holy sword. How could she ever forget that name? Holy sword. How could she ever forget that name? Even if 500 years had passed and even if her physical form had changed, the memory was still as vivid as if it were just yesterday. Lucia. No. Kairi. She was the rightful owner of the holy sword. Lucia brought her trembling hands to her face. What on earth is he talking about? The holy sword. Lucia was confused by the current situation. The shining sword in Xian's hand, the holy sword, shouldn't have been in a place like this. A sword that tasked a clueless girl, whose life was changed by the mere whims of fate, to suddenly save the world. She hated and resented that sword so much, the very name of it, for it took everything from her. The day after she killed the demon god, Kairi threw the holy sword into a volcano in the demon realm. Therefore, nobody knows the exact appearance of the holy sword except for her comrades, who only observed what she did from a distance. With the whereabouts of her comrades now unknown, she was the only one who knew the sword best. That's a lie. That was why she could assert this. That's not the holy sword. With an expression as if she had seen something unfathomable, Lucia glared at Xian. Why do you think that? However, Xian merely brushed off her gaze. His focus and curiosity was solely directed at the holy sword. The shining holy sword, sparkling like a star in the night sky, looked as mesmerizing as if it could steal a child's soul. Xian, with fervent eyes, examined the holy sword from various angles, even swinging it through the air. Then, Xian pointed the holy sword towards the empty stone coffin. Contrary to what he expected, only the sound of the sword cutting through the air could be heard. The sound that his sword should have created when it clashed against an object was absent. Only a faint sensation remained in Xian's hand, asserting its presence vehemently. It performs better than I thought. With an ominous remark, Xian kicked the stone, which was multiple times heavier than his own body. Thud. Half of the stone coffin fell apart from the impact. The broken side revealed a clean-cut face as if it was originally designed that way. Xian was surprised by what he had just done and stuck his tongue out in astonishment. Cutting through stone, like slicing melted butter, with just a sword. Even I am baffled by the sharpness of the swing. Truly, it's impressive. Right. Hearing Berta's admiration, Xian nodded with a smile. Even though I don't know magic, swordsmanship, or martial arts, I can still demonstrate this skill. I'm not sure if I can feel the divine power, but among the swords I know, not many show this kind of cutting power. No. Despite Xian's lengthy explanation, Lucia denied his words. I said no. With trembling hands clenched tightly, Lucia approached Xian in large strides. Her golden eyes revealed immense anger. Grind. Lucia's teeth ground in protest. The holy sword didn't look like that. Then, what did it look like? Xian shrugged, suggesting he found Lucia's words nonsensical. Despite feeling the surrounding air quiver due to her anger, he managed to remain calm and posed the question. It's just a sword with good cutting power. It's too short, both the blade and the hilt. The holy sword didn't have such a monotonous shape. Plus, it always had its accompanying sheath. What you're holding is merely a gleaming blade. It sounds like you've seen the real holy sword. Caught by Xian's remark, Lucia took a sharp intake of breath. Was this what he wanted to show her? Her once fierce eyes now glistened with tears. Lucia etched the current scene into her mind. Reincarnation. Lucia was the reincarnation of Kairi, and she was the warrior who, 500 years ago, bore the duty of a hero and engraved her name in history. Naturally, there was no one who knew the holy sword as well as she did. After all, there was a time when she was the owner of the holy sword. But now, Lucia could not answer Xian's question. The hero, Kairi. Those words reached her throat, but she swallowed them. Lucia couldn't utter those words. I am. She could not bring herself to say it. Revealing her identity here was risky. More than the existence of the goofball staring blankly from behind, the presence of the young boy in front of her bothered her more. Xian, who exactly are you? The emotion that emerged from her tangled thoughts was doubt. So, Lucia decided to ask Xian how he knew about this place. How he was able to navigate through the complicated maze. How he could be so sure that it was the holy sword. Lucia asked Xian all of these without missing a beat. Her eyes, brimming with questions, were red as if she would cry at any moment. In contrast, Xian's eyes were utterly cold and heavy. The boy's black pupils were filled with calmness, far from any signs of agitation. The stars told me. That's all there is to it. Lucia felt a familiar memory manifesting itself from the boy's words. Holy Sword. Among the myriad of weapons that were available in Reincarnated Sword Saint, this particular one was categorized as a sacred weapon. One could harness its divine power by merely wielding it, which primarily dealt additional damage to demonic races. One might wonder if there was a more effective weapon for the Dawn Castle dungeon where high-ranking demons roamed. However, the reason for putting in the effort to acquire the Holy Sword before the important succession event was not for use in the Dawn Castle. All of the maids in Dawn Castle, including the Horned Keeper, Yuma, even if they belonged to the demon race, acted as loyal allies until Shine's death. At least as long as I'm alive, they won't become my enemies. The primary targets were the apostles of the Devil Lord scattered all around the world. Shine stretched and savored the prideful feeling. With the acquisition of the Holy Sword, a weight was lifted from his heart. Now that he had acquired a valuable asset, there was no further business in the cave. Shine stepped out with his two companions. Fortunately, the necklace, which served as an item bag in the game, was still spacious even after gathering all the useful items inside the cave. Shine lifted an arm to shield his face from the pouring sunlight. Dawn had already broken on the previously dark, snowy mountain. The sun's rays seemed determined enough to melt even the perennial snow. The three of them walked silently on the frozen path. Even without any markings, the path was easy to find. The blood of the beasts that Shine had slain on the way served as guideposts. If that's really the Holy Sword. Suddenly, Lucia, who hadn't said a word since exiting the cave, spoke up. It might be better to discard it now. Why do you say that? Shine stopped walking and turned to look back. There stood Lucia, who looked pale and distressed. When one obtains the Holy Sword, they become unhappy. Lucia slowly lifted her head, her face filled with worry. The protagonist in the fairy tale, even after saving the world, didn't receive any reward. Despite pouring everything into it, sacrificing everything, they couldn't enjoy any happiness during their lifetime. I wondered what you were talking about. Shine drew his sword and approached Berta. Berta, I'll release you. Head to the castle and don't make any trouble. What? Why all of a sudden? Do you want to meet our family looking as miserable as you are now? No, that's not it. After hearing her reply, Shine swiftly cut the ropes that bound her tightly. Go there, and if you mention my name, they'll treat you as a guest. Understand? Yes, I understand. Berta slowly nodded and then hurriedly followed the trail. After watching her for a moment, Shine looked back. Lucia. The girl slowly lifted her head. Shine calmly approached her. Let's imagine for a moment. He then grasped Lucia's hand. Whether it was from fear or cold, her hand had been trembling slightly for a while. Imagine if I had left the Holy Sword here or hadn't taken it at all from that place. Then what would have happened? Shine poured out words he couldn't say in front of Berta. Lucia was curious about why Shine was bringing this up. The world would have perished. Is that something the stars told you? What if it is? You might be lying. Think whatever you want then. Shine patted Lucia's back. She glared at him, but Shine pretended not to notice. Still, it still scared him whenever she glared. You saw it, didn't you? How could someone like me know such a complex maze? And we came out safely. It can only be described as a miracle. You're calling yourself a kid. And also. After fidgeting with Lucia's trembling hand for a while, Shine suddenly let go and stepped back. It's none of your business. If you're unhappy about what happened today, then hit me. After saying this, Shine ran away with all his might. However, Lucia did not chase after him in anger. His childish behavior left her lost in thought. Shine. Lucia gazed at her own hand. The hand of Shine that she felt just a moment ago was rough and tough, far from that of a child's. Next episode. Previous episode. Episode 17. What I Wanted. Shine arrived at Dawn Castle while keeping his distance from Lucia. He expected Lucia, fuming with anger, to chase after him, but she probably was still in shock. Even after turning to check, there was no sign of the red-haired girl. Shine, feeling somewhat uneasy, approached the gate. The massive gate was so tall that you had to look up just to see its top, and it didn't look like it could be easily opened. After all, if anyone could easily open it, it wouldn't serve its function as a fortress gate and would soon be replaced. If he couldn't get in, he should call out. Shine knocked hard on the metal gate. Bang bang bang. There weren't any guards at the gate of Dawn Castle. However, there were plenty of servants who could hear the sound from the gate, even though it was quite far from the mansion. Who dares to come in? Only a few seconds had passed since he knocked, and there was already a reaction. Shine recognized the lively voice. Insia. I do not know anyone by that name. If you mean to refer to me, then you're mistaken. I am the third-ranked guardian of Dawn Castle, the one who despises fate the most, and he who unleashes divine wrath upon the wrongdoers with the title of Speedy Thunderbolt. Even though he had already revealed her identity, she responded with exaggerated denial. What was wrong with her? Then who is ranked first and second? The honorable descendants of Priant, the adorable young lord and lady, and, I forgot about the head maid. Let me correct that to fourth rank. Groan grr. The massive gate groaned loudly as it began to open. The maid, who was using all her strength to open the door, was none other than Insia. Once the gate was opened just wide enough for about 3 people to pass, Insia wiped the sweat from her forehead and gave Cheyenne a bright smile. It's really hard to open it alone. Phew. Why did you come alone? There are others with good strength. Looking at the panting Insia, Cheyenne asked this. With over 20 maids in Dawn Castle, it was strange that only she came to open the gates. He didn't even consider the possibility that they didn't hear his voice. Well, I lost a bet. Hee. Bet. Insia scratched the back of her head awkwardly. Looking at her, Cheyenne squinted suspiciously. What bet did she lose that led to this predicament? Insia quickly changed the topic upon noticing Cheyenne's skeptical gaze. Why did you choose to come in through the castle gate? Just like when you left, you could have climbed the castle wall. With an annoyed look, Insia crossed her arms and pouted. Of course, she and the other maids knew that Cheyenne had left without a word. Perhaps it was because of that. Normally, Insia would have opened the door without any fuss, but her attitude today was oddly irritable. However, Cheyenne didn't pay any mind. Thanks to the ruckus, he was able to properly bring Lucia along. Rubbing his sore shoulders, Cheyenne replied. I exerted myself all night and don't have the strength to climb the walls. You exerted yourself? Yes. I ran out of the lemonade you gave me halfway. Cheyenne took out empty bottles from his leather bag and handed them all to Insia. She looked at him silently for a moment before accepting the bag filled with empty bottles. There were more than 10 bottles. Oh my, he drank all of that. Insia began to worry if Cheyenne might end up drawing circles on the walls or something through the night. Cheyenne, burdened by the fatigue of wandering all night, trudged along the corridor. He wanted to collapse onto a bed and sleep immediately, but he was headed for the baths first. Dust and sweat clung to him, and he had intentionally smeared a good amount of blood on himself to attract Berta's attention, so he looked quite the sight. Master. Just when he was eagerly heading off to wash off all the grime, a maid he bumped into exclaimed in surprise. Are you severely injured? There's blood on you, what should we do? It was Ophelia. No, I'm not really hurt, and it's not my blood, so don't worry too much. Ophelia covered her mouth with her delicate hand, her eyes brimming with tears, clearly very shocked. It was amusing how different her reaction was compared to Insia's. But it was not that Insia's reaction was abnormal. It was that Ophelia's was special. On his way here, he encountered many maids, but most of them just gave a simple bow. Insia's indifference to his battered appearance was typical for this place. Regardless of the maid's typical reactions, Cheyenne didn't feel sorry about sneaking out at night without a word to Insia, but he did feel apologetic towards Ophelia. By the way. Suddenly, he wondered if Berta, whom he had sent ahead, had arrived safely. Speaking of which, Ophelia, I have a question. Yes. Did a slightly arrogant-looking black-haired woman come to the castle? At Cheyenne's question, Ophelia blinked in surprise. Oh. Come to think of it, an outsider woman knocked on the castle gate earlier. She didn't mention my name, did she? Yes, she did. Ophelia said and then smiled brightly. You're talking about a woman who had a stronger scent of human blood than a beast's and smelled strongly of mud, right? When she mentioned your name, Lady Yuma took her in. It must have been so unpleasant for you, having your name come out of such a dirty woman's mouth. Cheyenne scratched the back of his head. It was slightly startling to hear such harsh words from Ophelia, who was known to be the most delicate maid in the castle. Moreover, the way she spoke made it seem as if she treated the guest as trash. If such words had come from Insia's mouth, he might have shrugged it off. Feeling awkward, Cheyenne massaged the back of his neck. That was my doing. What? I told her to mention my name. I thought something like this might happen, but now I feel bad. I'm so sorry. I shouldn't have spoken ill of your guest. Ophelia closed her eyes tightly and repeatedly bowed. The laundry she was tightly clutching scattered across the corridor floor. It's okay. I trust that Yuma will treat her well. The Yuma that Cheyenne knew had always shown a compassionate side in the game. At least, as long as Berta didn't threaten Cheyenne, whom Yuma devoutly served, the chances of something happening to her were probably none. Cheyenne coughed a few times lightly, patted Ophelia's shoulder, and chuckled. I now consider it her karma. Indeed, who said not to listen to me? The term, Devil's Castle, was definitely a word written on Berta's mission statement. In this world, the term, devil, did not imply anything positive. How could a world, almost once destroyed by the demon lord, view the demon races favorably? Yet, it was puzzling why the Empire's institution explicitly referred to the castle of Priant, a significant pillar of the Empire, as the Devil's Castle. That was, up until a moment ago. Even as Berta submerged herself in a warm bath, she remained tense. Is the temperature to your liking? The reason was the presence of a woman attending to her. Berta, with her heart racing, slowly responded. Yes. The water's temperature is perfect. Being careful so that her voice wouldn't quiver or make any mistaken judgments as before, Berta was extremely cautious. However, Yuma, the Dawn Castle's head maid and loyal servant to the Priants, couldn't bear to see her uncomfortable. In Yuma's eyes, Berta seemed like a friend her son had brought home for the first time. There was an inherent pride filling a space within her heart. Whenever she looked at Berta, for some reason, she would recall Shine's smiling face. Moreover, Berta was the first outsider invited to the Dawn Castle in decades, truly a rare connection. After applying aromatic oil to her hands, Yuma gently massaged Berta's tense shoulders and whispered. Please speak comfortably. Since our young master invited Miss Berta, you must hold great renown. There's no need to use honorifics with a mere servant like me. No, not at all. Renown. I'm merely an employee getting a salary from the country. Berta responded with a bitter smile. Whenever Yuma praised her, memories of her embarrassing moments in front of Shine and Lucia would resurface. Hee. How can you be so modest? It's not common to find someone who works hard enough for the Empire that they literally emanate the scent of their efforts. Truly, you are the Empire's treasure. Thank you for your encouraging words. Not knowing how to handle the discomfort arising from deep within, Berta still felt enthralled by Yuma's touch. In all her years and assignments, this was the first time someone attended to her during a bath. Furthermore, the attendant was a beauty, captivating enough to inadvertently steal Berta's gaze. Berta, who grew up in a noble family with a decent reputation in the Empire, had never experienced such service from someone of such stunning beauty, even in their mansion in the capital. If one had to make a comparison, she could match the mesmerizing poet Berta once saw in the academic city's square. However, unlike that elf poet, the servant had horns that projected a formidable presence on her head. Berta might have been more at ease receiving her service if not for those horns. Feeling a tinge of regret, Berta questioned once more why this place was called the Devil's Castle.